she asked. Her gaze was penetrating. I could not turn away even if I wanted to. This seemed personal to her. Beyond the reverence of someone she was taught to worship. This was almost like she had suffered greatly because of her faith. I did not know what to tell her. I honestly had no clue what she was talking about. I'm still not sure where the hell I am, let alone if I am alive.
How do you know that I'm this chosen one? And what makes you so sure that I am him?
I asked. She took a deep breath. The armor on her broad shoulders creaked.
His skin will be the color of wet sand, his eyes black like a night void of stars. He will fall from the heavens, dead only to awaken when touched by one of his order. The trees will wither in the hall of the gods. All will know him by his symbol.
She recited and pointed at the symbol on her chest. My symbol, the symbol of Alki-Bulon. She turned her head to the sky and pointed. Far off in the distance I could see a star shining brightly in the night sky. That shining star was my symbol. Anyone who looked up at the sky could see it. Suddenly, a man stumbled out from the trees. He was bleeding heavily from a deep wound in his side. His face looked pale and blood coated his hands. He leaned on his sword like it was a cane. The blade was black and gleamed eerily in the firelight. He looked at me and smiled. He fell to his knees.
Finally, my Lord chosen, you have come.
The look of joy and peace in his eyes startled me. He looked as if all the pain and doubt he had was erased, like he could die knowing his faith was confirmed. The big woman rushed to his side.
Elder Ahmed,
she said as she caught him before he fell face first in the dirt. She held him in her arms.
Muazma, daughter of giants, and knight of the Order of the Chosen. You must do your duty. The enemies of our Lord are not far behind me. Protect him, and get him to the ruins of Alki-Bulon.
Elder Ahmed gasped. His voice was barely audible. You could see Muazama's heart breaking in her eyes. He squeezed her hand and looked up at me.
I am sorry if I have failed you in any way, or that I ever doubted you.
He gasped painfully. I did not know what to do or say. A light above me started to glow brightly. I looked up, and it was my symbol. The light covered him. It was so bright that it was blinding. As suddenly as it came, it vanished. When our eyes adjusted to the darkness, he was gone. Muazama sighed heavily and grabbed her sword and shield. She faced the trees, waiting. My heart raced. I could hear people marching through the woods. I grabbed Elder Ahmed's sword. It felt surprisingly light in my hand. Its black blade started to glow faintly. My whole body felt warm and light, like I was standing on air.
it seems you have been reunited with your sword,
Muazma said softly. Before I could respond, several men burst out of the woods. They were pale men, their hair varied from blonde to red. Their armour had the insignia of a burning sun on it. They saw us and stopped. A tall, hawkish man stepped forward. I could feel Muazma tense up. She gripped her sword tightly. He looked us both over. His eyes lingered on Muazma's insignia.
"You are of the Order?"
he asked, his voice raspy like he had a cold. Muazma did not answer.
"We were following an old man who had stole something that belonged to us."
The man started, then looked at the sword in my hand.
"You are carrying what belongs to us. I care not how you came by it. Just return it to me and go about your business,"
he said. He shifted his stance and placed his hand on the hilt of his sword. The men behind him did the same. I looked at the sword. I did not know who it belonged to. I just know it felt right wielding it. I shook my head. Muazama smiled and slashed the man's throat. She moved with a speed that I did not think was possible. The man stood there for a moment staring at me, oblivious to the fact his throat was cut. Blood spilled down his armour and he slumped forward. By the time his men realised they were in a fight, half of them were dead. Watching Muazama fight was like watching a dance. She slashed and killed with such grace it was almost beautiful. She moved around these men like the world had slowed down, and she alone was unaffected by it. The fight was over before it began. Muazama stood in the middle of several bodies, wiping the blood off her blade and shield on the men's cloak.
"We need to move, Chosen,"
she said, and pointed east.
"We are weeks, if not months, away from the ruins of Al-Kibulon,"
she said, and waited for me to start moving in that direction. The chill wind echoed softly through the chilled ramparts of the great Tower of Magic. This ancient tower has stood in Darhaven for centuries. Some say it was a gift to mankind from the gods of old. Others claim it was created so man could fight off the gods and no longer be the playthings of immortals. The imagination of men knows no bounds. Elves have controlled this tower for centuries, hoarding the power and ancient wisdom here for themselves. But it was here that Lorden lay tossing and turning in his sleep. His brown brow glistened with sweat, even though snow covered the tower and the land surrounding it. Lorden clinched the sheets as he writhed in his bed. Lorden was an elder among the Magi, one who constantly warned about the prophecy. He was greatly opposed to the Chosen One and the shift in power that would come when he arrived. Lorden was the chief advisor to the king. It was whispered that Lorden ruled the kingdom, and the king was merely a puppet, a face, a distraction from reality. Suddenly, Lorden's eyes snapped open.
"He is here,"
he whispered as he sat up. His greying beard matted and tangled. He took a deep breath to calm his nerves.
"His guardian has already found him,"
he mumbled. Lorden knew their best chance of killing the Chosen and preserving their power for centuries to come was to get him before he discovered who he was. Lorden had prepared for this day. He had armies trained and ready, assassins and mercenaries on constant payroll to do his bidding. He was the heir of the king, so his power and influence in the southern kingdoms were unmatched. He, being the accomplished Magi he was, all respected him. Thus why he, a human, was a guest of honour in the ancient Tower of Magi possessed by the elves. Lorden was the most accomplished Magi in all the human kingdoms, and possibly of all the races. Lorden rose from his bed and walked to the window. Lorden was older, his age a point of many arguments in the realms in which he was known. Some said he was as old as some of the elder elves, others thought he was just in great shape for being an elder. If one knew the cost that he had paid for his magic, they would cringe away from him. All magic comes with a toll. Each toll is different. Lorden's toll was timelessness. He had been alive since the last Chosen had walked the earth, witnessed the destruction and change that was wrought in the Chosen's wake. He was just a youth then, born to the outland of the northern deserts. The dark men are what they are called now, being that their skin tone is as dark as a starless night. They were a highly intelligent warrior people, nomads who did not allow other people among them. It was rare for someone not of them to be invited to their kingdoms and cities. Lorden was never really accepted among their people and was not allowed to marry from among them. He was protected and tolerated. The pride of the people would not allow anyone that shared their blood to be mistreated. But he was a half-breed. His mother was one of the Al-Kibulon people, the people who waited on the Chosen. Al-Kibulon was the greatest city of all Darhaven, but also the most private and secretive. Some referred to the people of Al-Kibulon as a cult. But the reality was they were just people from all over who left behind their tribes and kingdoms to serve the Chosen and be ranked among his people. They gave up their racial identities and nationalistic pride and were just known as the people of Al-Kibulon. It was a mixing pot. All the races were there. It was one of the few places where they all got along.